everybody.
Yeah, there's a planning subcommittee to be report to me.
So, can we come to order, please? We're broadcasting, we're on?
We are on.
Okay. So this is the August 3rd meeting of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers. Let's first establish a couple of formalities that we have a quorum. And so I'll just sort of do a sort of a roll call, except that, of course I don't have a, here we go. So Kathy is here. Lou is here. Gary is here. Jean is here. Yeah. Patty is here. Lynn is here. Bill Gardner is not here. Oh, yeah, Bill. Good. How are you feeling, Bill?
About half.
Good. Don Green?
He's here.
Hi, Don. I'm here. Peter Halley. Peter Kahn is here. Donna
Just
is
walked in.
just walked in. Great. Donna Martino. Steve Perlman is here, I know.
Right next to it.
Hi.
Scott Ullman's here. Is Pam?
Yeah.
Pam is not here or not here, okay. And then we have a new member, Michael Cody.
Yes.
So welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll hear a little bit about you later on.
Okay.
So we have a quorum. The next item of business is approving our items of business. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Yeah.
So moved.
Great. And second, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Okay. So we have the agenda. Minutes of the last meeting, they've been circulated. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Yes, okay. So move. Second. Gary, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Okay, good. So then we are to our main event today, which is the presentation by Libby Gibson. Libby, hey, I keep saying this at these meetings. So-and-so needs no introduction because it's actually true. And I know your time is valuable. I could either go through a half an hour of the wonderful things you've done, or go right to the wonderful things you're doing, which I guess I prefer to do.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
You're so welcome. And thank you. This is actually one of my favorite summer meetings. So thank you all for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here. You say I need no introduction, but which is lovely. I'm just gonna say though, for people who may not know, I've been with the town for 35 years. I've been the manager since 1995. And my family is all here. I have a child who just graduated from college and one just going into college. Just a little background. So if anybody was at the Nantucket Civic League annual forum, you're going to hear some of the same things because I sort of duplicate the presentation a little bit, although I go into more detail here. And I like to spend a little time on town meeting because that is the biggest activity probably that drives a lot of the town's functions and operations. So the 2024 annual town meeting, we had 112 articles. We had 105 for comparison in 2023. The articles are grouped by category: zoning, general bylaw, real estate, home rule petitions, and citizen articles. We had 22 zoning articles at the 2024 town meeting, 11 general bylaw articles, 19 real estate, 15 home rule petitions, 9 of which were resubmittals. As an aside, our legislators tell us that Nantucket has the most home rule petitions of any town in the state. And sometimes that is not really to our benefit of getting things passed. We had 27 citizen articles. 9 of the articles were capital related, and they were contingent upon ballot questions at the annual town election, which happened on May 21st. We had 1 capital exclusion and 8 debt exclusions. And those include, I'll just briefly say what they were. We had an article that was seeking funding for town employee housing feasibility. And that was admittedly not as crisp as town meeting evidently would have liked. It was intended, it was about $3 million, I think, and it was intended to provide us with some flexibility in the funding so that we could select some parcels to develop and also kind of figure out what to develop for town employee housing on them. That did not pass. The acquisition of 31 Western Ave, which is the former youth hostel, did not pass. Supplemental design funds for a new DPW facility, which is currently proposed to be out at 1 Shadbush Road, town-owned property. That did not pass, but it didn't pass the election. So if we want to pursue that, we will have to get a town meeting vote. It's not on the special in September, but we're contemplating whether or not to put it on the annual next year. There was a supplemental appropriation for Newtown Road improvements that passed both town meeting and the election. There was an article for Tom Nevers debris removal, erosion control, and dune restoration. That passed. And as an aside on that, we are also hoping for some federal grant funds for that project since it's a formal federal defense site. They call it a FUDS site, formerly used defense site. And that's going to be quite a project. I think you probably have heard or seen that a lot of the debris is starting to be exposed, but it's way back in there. So getting it out without a plan is probably not a good idea, but also getting it out without the associated erosion control and dune restoration project with it, it's just going to all collapse is the thinking. So we're working on that and hopefully we get these federal funds. Expansion of lined landfill cell 3B passed. Reconstruction of Jetty's tennis courts passed. We had this may be on the second or third time we were seeking construction funding for a public safety auxiliary building, which would go behind the public safety facility and house fire and police equipment. That did not pass. And we had capital outlay for DPW, fire, vehicles, and equipment that passed. So that's just a little summary of the big things that happened at town meeting. The articles that generated the most discussion at the FinCom and or select board level included, of course, short-term rental articles, car rental agencies, offshore wind. There was a home rule petition for department heads to become town employees. That had a lot of discussion, and a bylaw amendment regarding the stretch code, the stretch energy code. So we're still in kind of the follow-up phase, even from the annual town meeting. The home rule petitions have to all get sent up to our legislators. Bylaws go to our town code publisher and get the town code will need to get updated. A lot of procurement to be done for the things that were approved to purchase or build. And sometimes we have work groups that get set up to further examine stuff or come back with recommendations on things. Other big projects and issues include the upcoming special town meeting, obviously. We have 17 articles on that warrant on September 17th. 16 of them are citizen articles. One of them is town sponsored. 6 are related to short-term rentals. And you probably have been reading, if not attending, a lot of the meetings about this. It's obviously very, very controversial. We've been spending a lot of time on the proposed right whale vessel reduction restrictions, and that has taken quite a bit of time. The thing that has overshadowed everything is the Vineyard Wind blade failure. A lot of high-level people have been spending the bulk of their time on that. Our Island Home and the construction of a new facility at the Sherburne Commons site. That's a huge project, and that is also taking up a lot of high-level staff time. The select board strategic plan for the last couple of months, maybe even 3 or 4 months, we've been giving updates on the 5 focus areas of the board's plan. And once a month, the updates are coming, and we're hoping to have those updates completed by September. The board has a retreat scheduled for the middle of October to update its strategic plan. Hiring and retaining personnel and personnel staffing. Since 2023, high-level hiring includes a new police chief, housing director, public works director, public health director, director of planning. And then these aren't department heads, but a project manager, a town engineer, and a real estate specialist. And those are key positions to get projects and other operational items underway. Other projects include, we have many transportation projects that are pending or in progress, including projects that have to have sewer and or stormwater infrastructure improvements or repairs done first. The waste services agreement for our solid waste facility, we've issued an RFP that the agreement expires at the end of 2025. And we spent the last 12 to 18 months putting together a request for proposals for either a new or the current operator is most certainly going to submit a proposal. And the RFP is out. I think proposals may be coming in at this point. So that is obviously quite a large issue. PFAS, I'm sure you've heard about this. That is also an issue that's taking a lot of time, even though, to be quite frank about it, PFAS is in everything, and it has nothing to do with the town putting PFAS in people's water. But people are very freaked out about it, and there are calls to extend water and install filters, and there's a lot of stuff going on at the federal and state level on this, but some of it's really a little bit out of our control. Facilities maintenance, we are really trying to get at hiring our facilities staff and getting at the maintenance of all of our public buildings. We have a lot of public buildings. They are scattered about the island, and it takes a lot of time and effort and staff to maintain them. We finally, after several years, were able to get the town building downtown 16 Broad painted, windows replaced, and the gutters replaced. Actually, the gutters I think are scheduled for the fall, but it's looking really a lot better. And we're trying to get around to the department, to all the rest of the buildings, and we have a facilities maintenance plan that's prioritized. So we're working on that. We also, though, have a kind of an emerging new facilities category, which is employee housing. And it is both, we are renting properties for town employees, and we own properties that we are renting to town employees. And all of those need to be maintained. We're starting to really look at AI and what a policy should be for the town. At the annual Mass Municipal Association conference in January, several of us attended an AI workshop, and all the municipalities are starting to look at this and starting to develop policies. And we kind of hope that a standard policy will emerge, so we're not all reinventing the wheel. And we've got our IT department looking at that. Cybersecurity, of course, is a huge issue. And we've got, I would say we have as secure systems go, we have a pretty secure system in the town. And, it's just, people have to be vigilant. We have an ongoing cybersecurity training program that goes out to all employees. And you just got to pay attention nowadays, even in personal things. And of course, the town council study committee is well underway. Coastal resiliency projects are, as you probably all know, you probably had people in here talking about the coastal resiliency plan. There are many, many projects in that plan, and they go out a long way. They're not all bunched up at the beginning, but we're starting to plan now for some of the really long-term ones. Easy Street in particular is an area that we're focusing on. And also Washington Street from about Francis Inn. And that is taking quite a bit of time as well. I talked about long-term solid waste, a strategic plan, DEI. Our DEI director resigned earlier in the year to pursue other opportunities, and we are now working on sort of determining what do we want in that position, and should we perhaps in the interim anyway hire a consultant to help sort of assess what our programming is, what our needs are, where gaps might be in town government. Large projects on the horizon are in the planning stages. I mentioned the Island Home, that's definitely out there. The senior center, the idea would be that once a new Our Island Home facility is hopefully constructed, the current site where the Island Home is would be repurposed for the senior center, not to be sold. There seems to be persistent fear out there that the town is going to sell the Island Home property. Not happening. DPW facility, as I mentioned, being planned for out at Shadbush Road. Seasonal employee housing, we have an appropriation already approved within the last couple of years to construct seasonal dorms at the 2 fairgrounds site, and that's going to get underway very shortly. That will enable us to house the lifeguards there all in one location, and then the housing that we own for the lifeguards can be repurposed, hopefully for some year-round housing, employee housing opportunities. The Surfside area water main extension and associated transportation improvements in the Surfside area, that is a multi-year, multi-phase project. It's out, involves Lovers Lane, Monahans, Orkawa, that whole area. Water is being extended out there. And then at the same time, and then concurrent with that, there will be road reconstruction and the installation of bike paths and stormwater infrastructure. PFAS I mentioned. We established a communications division of town admin about 1.5 years ago, and they are really getting at social media posting. We have a town manager newsletter that goes out once a month. I haven't done it this month. I didn't really do it in July, but on Thursday mornings after the select board meeting, I do a quick radio recap of what the board did at around 8. NCTV covers many of the regulatory and public meetings of the town. And in addition to our communications division, which has a communications manager and a public outreach coordinator, we've engaged a firm, a professional communications firm, to help with certain issues that require additional expertise. And it's really interesting because at a lot of recent municipal management meetings that I've gone to, a lot of towns are doing this. It's kind of a trend because one or two people cannot keep up with everything that the town is doing. And obviously we'll want to try to get ahead of certain other news outlets. And it's really difficult because there's so many things happening at one time, and we have to really make sure they're factual and correct and timely. So that's my kind of update, and I'm happy to take any questions or whatever.
Is there any truth to the rumor that Nantucket is seeking to secede?
No, there's not. That is a persistent rumor that's probably been going on since what, 1970? But I have not.
Just made it up.
Probably earlier. No, there is no truth.
Update on the wind farm problem.
Okay, so at this upcoming select board meeting, the focus hopefully is going to be information coming from state and federal regulatory agency representatives. We've asked them to come to the meeting in addition to our state rep and senator. And I will say that, again, a lot of high-level people in the town are spending a lot of time on this. The chair of the select board, Brooke Moore, has basically, this is her full-time job for the past month, and she's been really excellent in coordinating incoming questions, inquiries, contact with the state and federal agencies, and kind of trying to coordinate and organize our response to this. We're looking at, this has sort of spawned many other issues. So I know there's the Good Neighbor Agreement is somewhat controversial, as is the Vineyard Wind Farm itself. So we're looking at what could the Good Neighbor Agreement be amended, renegotiated somehow. Really, the regulatory agencies, mostly federal, are going to have to make some permitting changes if we want to see different things happen with the wind farm. I mean, just as a tiny little aside, the notification of the blade failure, just that seemingly little item alone has caused a lot of research and discussion about how it happened, when it happened, should it have happened differently, and how do we make it happen differently going forward. That's just one thing of it, and the cleanup you know, what we're, there's kind of a call for, and I think the board really wants to undertake some kind of assessment as to environmental health risks, and are we in danger from the shards and the debris? Probably not, because it's so spread out over such a wide area, but who really knows? And I'm not even quite sure how an assessment is going to even be done, but we're trying to figure out who can do it, when can they do it, how are they going to do it, how much is it going to cost? Can we, well, that's another aspect of this whole thing, the recovery costs, and how to get those paid for by Vineyard Wind. So we almost need like a new position, Vineyard Wind blade failure coordinator. So it's just, it's a lot. So, but I know some of you have tuned in and even commented. A couple meetings ago, I think the board said we are going to try to get all questions answered. So we are working on compiling the questions now and getting them answered. Some of them are not answerable by us. We need the answers from others. And some of them are just rhetorical, like, you know, the board should never approve any more offshore wind farms. The select board has zero authority over that. No town can say, you can't put a wind farm out there. It is completely outside of our control. Can we comment? Yes. And now we have maybe even more of a basis to submit constructive comments based on the experience that we've just had. So I don't know if that helps, but it's really become like, you know, it was this one thing, and now it's branched out all over to chase down lots of things.
You probably can't answer the question, but my major concern is health.
Yeah.
How's this going to affect us? Is it going to be long lasting? Will it eventually dissipate? I don't know.
Yeah, that we are trying to get that answered, but it's not going to be quick. We're trying to figure out a firm to engage who maybe has done it before. I don't know if there's any firms out there that have done a blade failure before. We've been hearing there was one in, I think, England.
Yes.
So maybe they did something like that, but you know, people have to chase all that down, and it's just not as easy as it sounds. But that is, I would say, become our number one priority and activity in town government.
I'm going to ask you a crazy question. You hear about secession. To where?
Oh,
Are we going to go back to New York?
Oh, no idea.
That's the question that should be asked when someone asks that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Good. Done.
First, I want to commend you. I don't know how you're doing all this.
Well, I just tell you also, please don't think I'm a complainer, but I hurt my back very badly on July 4th, and I've had to work from home ever since. I think I can get back on Monday. But it has been very challenging to keep up with everything remotely. But anyway, thank you.
On another subject.
Yes.
I'm a member of the town council study committee. And I appreciate it. It was very important to me, and I'm delighted to do all the work and be on the committee. In our most recent meeting, I brought up the idea of somehow having us become more involved as we're amending the proposed charter and so forth. And the response was adamantly no. Knowing that we are not able to vote because we are non-voting taxpayers, and yet we're taxpayers. So we were grappling with how we could approach this within our group here, as well as at the town council study. I had suggested maybe a position in sort of an organizational chart where we could have an influential or advisory role or something. And I'd like to reach out to you while you're here to raise that possibility or opportunity for us to have a more active role. Since we do participate financially, and we are endeared to Nantucket. We love it. We're here because we want to be here, and it's important to us. So we really would value some kind of position. And with your expertise, maybe you can think of something. Along those lines, I did reach out through Joe Rouse, our wonderful chair, to the Collins Institute to do a survey across the country to see if there was a similar situation in their governments and how they approached it. And Joe did reach out to them, and we'll hear probably next week if they have any research to share with us. So could you add that to your 240 items?
Sure.
Think about
I,
that.
when I attend meetings like this, I usually give the board a quick email, just sort of summarizing the topics that came up.
Mhm.
So I will let them know that. So it sounds like you sort of want more of a little bit of a seat at the table, kind of a
Yes.
thing, with maybe certain things referred to you for some kind of recommendation or advice or feedback. So I certainly will pass that along to them.
We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know there are a number of towns in Massachusetts that have very similar committees to this. And that might be worth finding out what their role is. Do they, how active are they? How sort of influential, like you said, are they? Sometimes it's a little hard to reach out to. There is a way that you can reach out to all the towns. I find that not a lot of people end up responding, either because they don't have the issue that you're asking about, or I don't know, they just don't respond. So, but I could, not immediately, but sometime in the next couple of months, put something out to the seasonal communities, because that they'd be the ones more likely to have a group like this, to see what the role of their group
Or if I
is.
can assist you in some way,
Sure.
since you have
Yeah,
so much going on.
I will, I'll communicate with you directly at a later time.
I think that the fact that we can meet year round is, and we've got a full board, it's,
Yep.
there's a lot more activity and a lot more possibility to contribute.
Gotcha.
The ability to meet virtually has really changed the game here.
Yes.
And I guess that's another thing. So I understand that will sunset at some point in the not too distant
Well,
future.
I don't know why the legislature won't just make it permanent instead of stringing everybody along to say, well, this is going to expire on March 31st, 2025, or I think that's the date right now. Just make it happen. Because we're all, it's hard to plan for, even from a municipal perspective of, are we going to have remote meetings after then or not? Because we have to change a lot of things if we're not. So letters to the legislators will certainly help. And we've sent them. It wouldn't hurt for you all to prepare one and send it. And maybe not even just to ours, to somehow to all of them, or I don't know. I think the Mass Municipal Association has advocated for this. So I can't say that everything that MMA advocates for happens, but it does I think have a better chance if they're behind it. And I don't know anybody who's not behind this.
Yeah. So the legislators that are related to Nantucket or have more broadly?
I would say more broadly, definitely the ones related to Nantucket.
And if you live in some other part of Massachusetts.
Yes, you're a person.
Yeah.
People.
I mean, our legal situation right now, as everybody here knows, is that under a town bylaw, we have this committee exists because of the bylaws. And its mission is basically to bring things to the select board's attention that are of interest and importance to non-voting taxpayers. And so what Donna is suggesting pretty clearly is that sort of is the existing bylaw plus. And the question is exactly what that plus ought to look like, and that's a combination of what the town would likely vote for, and what can actually be done by a group of volunteers like this.
changing subjects for a moment. Our island home has been a topic for decades almost, it seems. And of course, the longer we talk about it, the more expensive it becomes. And I'm wondering, if we also need a decision, it seems to me, if you have family here, you need to make plans. What do you see here as a timeline?
Well, as of this moment, we are hoping to go to the 2025 annual town meeting with a construction appropriation request. We are pretty far down the road with design. And we are working now on public outreach, and we're hopefully in the next couple of months going to be sending out a lot of information about it. We have also talked about what are we going to do if it doesn't pass? And I do not know the answer to that right now. When people have asked me that, I have said, well, the current facility cannot last forever as is. I don't know what its lifespan is going to be, but already, not even already, for several years now, there have been infrastructure related things that really ought to be done. It's not code compliant. Obviously, that's one of the expenses of the new facility, to make it code compliant. The rooms will be bigger, the hallways wider, the kitchen configured differently. Most of the infrastructure will probably be up on an attic level, a second floor, not under the kitchen floor where some of it is now. So we can't really fix up the current one. We've looked at that already, and we've looked at, can we build a new one at the site of the old one? And the answer is yes, you can. However, because people live there, some of them, all of them, are going to have to move at some point for the duration of the construction. They will not be able to, by Department of Public Health regulations, be there while construction is going on. There are a shortage of nursing home beds in Massachusetts. I don't know about New England, but it's daunting to think about. I mean, the whole thing is pretty daunting, quite frankly, to begin with, because municipalities don't typically run nursing homes. And it's a whole other
It's right on
aspect
the
of,
water too. Isn't it?
Well,
Issue?
yes, that has come up as well. And that is definitely an issue, especially in an evacuation kind of a situation. So it's controversial, it's challenging, and we're trying to forge ahead with it. And
I guess the question is, which would, the horse in the cart kind of question as to whether or not there should be approval first before you spend all this effort to.
Well, we feel like there has been approval in the form of $8.5 million already was approved by town meeting and the voters for the design. And the associated owner's project manager, and we're doing a process called construction at risk, where the contractor will bear the risk of the cost. And they've submitted a certain price if we can't go above that price. So we also, so I think what we're kind of hanging our hats on is the voters approved that, and it was widely known. That's not the construction number, that's just the design number. They also approved a $5 million operating override for the facility 2 years ago. So we took that as a sign that voters are supportive of the town running the facility. Now, when they see a price tag of
Over 100 million.
that price range,
What's shocking to me is that the current estimate is 150 million, right? 110,
it's roughly around, it's hovering around 100.
right? And here's a facility that's 38 beds, which are not full all the time. It can't break even, so the town is now giving it $5 million a year.
Well, let me, okay.
And
Go
so we're
ahead.
talking about replacing it with over $100 million worth of expenditure for 44 beds, right? That's the new plan. And just think how many people in town employees could benefit from $100 million toward housing for the locals. To me, the trade-off should be considered, and I don't know if it's going to be considered
I think it is being
Yeah.
considered, and there has been active discussion by board members of should we be in this business? But Gary, I want to correct a couple of things. The current facility has 45 beds. There may be 38 people in there today, but it has the capacity of, we are licensed for 45 beds. The new facility will be licensed for 45 beds. There's another thing you said that
Can't get the help either, by the way, as you know, we have to get the contract people,
we have to get the contract
it was
people.
time and a half.
Although the contract, so we have had to contract for travel nurses. And that though is not necessarily a phenomenon unique to Nantucket. There's a nursing shortage nationwide.
Right.
And it's tough work. It's hard work. So yes, that is definitely an issue though. I hear you.
But what I don't get is there aren't any other municipalities that are in the business of this, and there's a reason for that. And yet we're still forging on to your point about housing the ones that we need to even service what we have going. So why don't other municipalities, why aren't they in this business?
Well, I think it's probably because the nursing home business is typically a private operation because you don't have necessarily a union environment. So you can operate a little bit more efficiently, some would argue. And they charge rates that will make a profit. We would have nobody in there if we were charging rates that made a profit and they weren't allowed to use Medicaid or Medicare. So there's a business model that a private nursing facility cannot implement in a municipal setting. We've had a couple of inquiries over the years from private groups, firms, companies that have asked about operating the island home, but it becomes clear after a few minutes, they want the land.
Right.
They don't want to operate, they would sell it off and turn it into something else. They don't want to operate a nursing home because it is not profitable here. So I would say that, again, this is controversial. There isn't like a wave of support or a wave of non-support for this project, but I would say that a lot of voters, based on what I hear and based on the results of the recent votes that I mentioned, support having a facility here that can house their families ultimately. Although I will say it's not just, I hear people say, well, it's 45 people, so it's, $1 million a year each or whatever. That is sort of true, but there are a lot of people who go to the island home to visit. It's not just families that go visit their loved one, it's friends, there are a lot of activities that are held there. The other thing that could possibly help offset costs going forward once there is a new facility are things like physical therapy services and occupational therapy services and things like that people from outside the facility could come to, because there is a shortage of PT here. And I'm not saying that's part of the program right now. That's kind of an add-on later. And we would not want to compete with the hospital, but I just happen to be going to PT twice a week right now. And if I didn't have standing appointments, it'd be really hard to get in.
Yeah, there is a lack of rehabilitative services on the island.
Yes.
And the hospital, the market just is not big enough, I guess, for the hospital to expand into that. They got their own problems that they're dealing with right now.
They do physical therapy and other.
Yeah, but for example, I needed cardiac rehab. And you have to go to the mainland to get that.
And that's because they had a fabulous cardiac rehab. After my helicopter trip to Mass General many years ago, I came back and there was a fabulous program, cardiac rehab. It was run by a woman named Katie Derrigan, something like that. She was fabulous. And then she and her husband decided to leave the island. And for the next 5 years, Nantucket Children's Hospital tried to replace her. And I spoke to the president many times. And I said, are you going to replace it? And they said they can't find anyone. So that's why we don't have cardiac rehab on the island. Just to get someone who's an expert in that was apparently impossible.
But I think, I guess the point of all this is that there are possible ancillary services
Yeah.
that this facility might be able to provide that would be accretive to the carrying costs of the facility.
Exactly.
But that's just a possibility right now.
Yep.
So,
Has a study been done, I assume it has, as to what the annual operating loss would be, assuming all 45 beds or rooms are occupied and whatever the Mass Health reimbursement schedule currently is?
Yes, when we were looking at, when a new facility at a different site came up initially, right before COVID, we did some modeling of operational costs with some different scenarios, and we are in the process of updating it. So yes, that is gonna be done. I mean, there is a loss. There's no question about it.
And I know in privately owned nursing homes, there's a combination of Medicaid patients and what we call
Yeah.
market patients.
Yep.
Oh, as a town operation, are we allowed to have two levels
Yes.
of pricing?
Yes,
Or we
and,
don't?
and we in fact do have that. We've semi-recently, I guess it probably started in COVID, engaged a firm, Eisenstein Flaherty and Associates, to help administer the facility. And because we were having a very hard time hiring an administrator. And they have provided a lot of assistance and support for reimbursable expenses. And we are realizing additional revenue from what they have found that we perhaps were not submitting for, or, you know, you probably will get this. It's unbelievably complicated. The codes and you're on one code, you're in another code, but you're getting the same thing, but the reimbursement is different. And that is all getting much more operationalized so that we will realize the reimbursements that we are really entitled to.
Just a question on the 45 beds. The original island home is probably 50 years old.
1980, so
Okay,
Yep.
whatever, but I'm saying, is 45 enough? I mean, how was 45 determined?
Mike, good question. So I don't know how it initially was determined, but the Department of Public Health, I think, has bed numbers for the different types of, like, we have a 45 bed license. If we wanted to go higher, we'd have to undertake something called the determination of need, which they conduct, and we could potentially increase it, but you have to have a lot of things in place in order to increase it. Now, that has come up a little bit about, is 45 beds enough? We're not full now, but is that due to other things? And it could be due to other things. People aren't ready to go there. To be quite frank, some people do not want to go there. It's not modern. And I'll just give you another sort of personal example. My mother-in-law was there for a year before she passed away. There's no real private place other than the person's room, which is filled with a wheelchair and a bed and a bathroom. And you can't sit down anywhere. You can go in the hallway, but it's not enough.
it's not home.
It's not home. And it's never going to be your home, but the idea is to make it more home-like, to get more people interested in going there. There's also some talk about, is there a way to develop or supplement or initiate some sort of visiting nurse program so that people could stay in their own homes? And somehow, I don't know if it's a town initiative or a private group that might be supplemented with town funds, unknown right now, but is that an option? And I guess that could be some sort of option, but again, my own mother was at her home for a long time before, with some nursing care. Full-time nursing care for somebody is very, very expensive, especially if your insurance does not even nearly cover it. But who's going to take care of the roof when it needs to be replaced, and who's going to deal with the landscaping, and who's going to, deal with the.
And then
plumbing.
the emergency services, that instead of
Right.
going down the hall, when there's an emergency, you need the fire department to come.
Exactly. So it sounds like, oh yeah, let's do that. But it really, it takes a real deep analysis of it. Would it be used? How much it will cost? Who's going to run it? But that is definitely an area that I think we would like to explore.
But just for informational purposes, there's a whole concept of hospital at home that Mass General Brigham actually is one of the proponents of, to try to move patients from the hospital to their home using technology as well as using visiting nurses and visiting doctors, because it's much less expensive to treat patients at home than it is in a hospital setting. And I would suspect that same theory carries forward to nursing home practices. And plus, a lot of people don't want to be in a nursing home. They want to be at home.
Yeah.
And they're willing to pay the freight, which
Yeah.
is very high.
Yeah.
So can we shift? Yeah,
I will shift, I'll shift, Peter.
yeah.
And Libby, if you said this before I walked in, I'll retract, but I know Mike Burns came back as traffic and safety. And I was curious as to whether, other than like a rotary here and there, if the town is having to investigate whether there are options to maybe develop a whole new road system to deal with the amount of construction work that comes off Old South and off Noverdier Farm. Because it takes like an hour to get anywhere on that side of the island now, and it isn't just tourists and it isn't just rental cars, it's day-to-day people who have to go to work.
Yeah.
So it almost seems like we need to investigate, somewhere, and maybe there's a road that is like, remember we used to have the high occupancy vehicle lane? I mean, maybe there's a road that's just dedicated to the full-time working guys getting their trucks out and working, but not getting them out on the same road as everyone else. And I'm just curious as if he's looking at some options.
I haven't heard that he's looking at that sort of option, but I don't know any reason why he couldn't. And several months ago, the board had an update from the DPW director and Mike about various transportation projects that are underway. Did they have to do with alleviating traffic congestion? Not really. It was more like this sidewalk on Pleasant Street from Five Corners towards the Stop and Shop, and on Sparks, some kind of a redo of the sidewalk there, things like that. Yeah, they're more safety related. Now there is a controversial proposal floating around out there, which may turn into a pilot test at some point, and that is making, and I don't remember which way, making Pleasant Street one way and Sparks the other. And again, I don't really remember which way they were going to be, but sometime this fall/winter, there is going to be a sewer project on Pleasant Street between Five Corners and Stop and Shop. And we were thinking, would that be an opportunity to try this? When it first was floated, a lot of people came out and said, no. It'll be disastrous to us and whatever, but maybe we just give it a try and see what it's like. And if it's a disaster, then we don't do it anymore. There are some other streets around that people that sort of had their own unintended pilot program. Gardner, for example, when there was a sewer project on there, and so people came out of that saying, "Oh, why don't you make it one way?" But no one can really agree on what way. So there have been some, I guess, I wouldn't even call them exploratory discussions, but every now and then, sort of maybe in desperation, somebody will say, should we put a road in on the Milestone Bike Path connector? Could that be, but then we really want to do some traffic studies on that. Is that actually going to alleviate, right?
But it's worse than just traffic. There's a whole public safety component.
Yes,
Because
there
if
is.
someone needed an emergency vehicle.
Right.
And they had to access Old South or Noverdier Farm, it's not like those roads are wide enough that people can actually pull over and give an emergency vehicle clearance. So it is kind of frightening when you see the backlog.
Yeah,
The same thing with Prospect, and that's right by the hospital.
yeah.
So Is there some way to make that one way?
Oh,
I think, again, that might be a potential pilot situation. And traffic study modeling would really need to be done to figure out, is it going to alleviate anything? And the abutters are gonna want a lot of input. And
I would say that we spend a lot of time at these meetings talking about traffic and
Yeah.
what have you. And I think that all the fantastic traffic planning in the world will run up against a serious roadblock, which is called the annual town meeting.
yeah,
Because financing any of these changes, if it involves your favorite tree or this or that, or the other thing, it's been an impossibility over the years that I've been involved looking at this stuff. Now, that's not to say it can't be done, but it's the best laid plans just can't get done unless there is either a change to the annual town meeting
yeah.
program or some kind of community outreach that nobody has been able to accomplish yet.
Actually, I would say town council
Yeah, well,
is the perfect solution.
I agree that well, we don't know that, but at least it's a possible solution. But Scott has, I think, been patiently with his hand up.
But this committee has a mandate to advise you. Looking back, looking forward, how can we be more effective?
Well, this meeting is very helpful, and I think I like it when you guys bring in other town employees to give you updates and things. I kind of like the idea that Donna sort of was a little bit referencing of, are there more things we could refer to you for, is there research you could do for us? Well, part of our, I'm not gonna say dilemma really, but when we really want to explore something, or do other towns do this, that, no one has time to really dig into contacting the other towns and sticking with calling them if they don't respond to an email and just doing the research. We've thought about hiring some interns to, pick a project and we hire an intern to do it. We have WPI students who do a series of projects over the fall and early winter. But, I'm not diminishing them in any way, but they are college students. They're not professional consultants. They can do really decent research though, that could be very useful for whatever we're trying to look at. But I'm sure all of you have individual experiences with business or whatever field you're in that could help us with, I don't know, whatever. So maybe that is enough. If we're struggling with something, maybe we just throw it to you. And not to solve, but to give us some feedback, like this isn't really that big of a problem. Or it's a bigger problem than you think, or something like that. But I think
we do
Peter,
have answers to everything here. Extreme confidence in our own abilities.
Yeah.
I think you raised a very good point though about the annual town meeting and whether or not a town council would change that, who knows? Because people, they're not gonna elect their favorite person who thinks like they do. But a lot of things don't progress because a few people don't like it.
And that's one of my questions, because in your earlier comments, you mentioned that, and I can't remember which, something didn't pass at the annual town meeting, but it did pass at the election. And I was just wondering what
Yeah.
the numbers look like, small number at the annual town meeting that voted it down, and then a bigger number at the election, because that's one of our sort of town council thoughts, that you don't have the co-opting of the annual town meeting by a small group of people.
Yeah. That was the supplemental appropriation for the new DPW facility. I don't remember the numbers,
Yeah.
but that's a good point. If it passed overwhelmingly at the election, but not town meeting, then
Or just, 5,000 people at the election, 500 people at the town meeting
right.
or less.
right.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah. Yeah, even analysis like that we don't have time to go back and look at the votes of everything from town meeting, that can often be very helpful for particular initiatives or proposed projects or things like that.
What is the biggest revenue producing industry? Is it tourism or is it construction?
That might be more of a question for Leslie, but I will say that for town operations, short-term rentals right now are the biggest revenue producer. Yep.
Over those other two?
Yes. That now construction would be the fees for permits.
Oh. Okay.
And-
You have the fees for permits, and then you have the next year's tax assessment.
Yeah, there's the new growth that would be factored into the property tax revenue. But short-term rentals, which nothing surpasses that, but short-term rentals is the biggest non-property tax revenue producer.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And that never existed before 2019.
Right. Exactly,
Want to go back to our traffic problem.
yes.
The issue of paid parking now, again, is on the table. And in my opinion, that is absolutely not going to relieve the traffic problems that we have. What we need is not traffic meters, what we need is more parking. Takes us back to the issue of a parking deck. The electric company, that area was discussed in the past as being ideal for a transportation center, including a parking deck. One of the problems is, how do you pay for it? I know what I'm going to say. Your brother's not going to be happy, but I would put a $25 surcharge on all these cars that come over here from people that don't live here all year round. And that would pay for that parking deck over a long period of time. I don't know if that's something that's feasible. I haven't gone into looking at the actual dollars and how it would be allocated and what it would cost. But it's something I think that deserves to be looked at a little closer. And the paid parking is not going to solve the problem.
Along with this paid parking issue, one of the statistics that I found to be astounding, and maybe nobody else would be astonished by, is the effect of free bus transportation on ridership. Where I understand riders basically is doubled and tripled, and understanding how that has affected, parking and traffic would be probably a good thing as well, because an answer to all the vehicle traffic is fewer vehicles, because people have other ways that they find are optimal and more convenient.
And Peter, to add to that, it should be beneficial if there was a parking lot not in the town center that people can then have hop a quick shuttle to the town center, because that's what a lot of the frustration is, just people circling, and kind of changes the whole.
Yeah, and then the things of the parking enforcement, another sort of thing that I've heard, I have no idea whether this fact is a true fact, is that the parking lot at the Stop and Shop is just filled with overnight parkers.
Absolutely.
Have no place else to park, or maybe they do have something, but no place else is convenient and it's free. And that we know that when the Stop and Shop was reconstituted, that parking was going to be a problem there to begin with, and now we've got another cause of not enough parking at that very important hub.
Anecdotally, I would add a very simple thing. I think there should be a study. Somebody can do this very easily. The number of yellow lines now that are in your downtown streets are excessive. I mean, it's everybody wants it in front of their house, but they don't necessarily need it. And that will free, and they free up 25 spots more. I mean, that's downtown, that helps.
What we need is more spots. That's
Right.
the bottom line.
Right.
I mean, you need
Then
more parking.
you go yellow line, everything is kind of like the hip bone is connected to the thigh bone. And when I see those yellow lines that are being not obeyed,
Well, it's
and
not big, well.
two-way traffic can't, be maintained on the road.
Well,
So if you want to eliminate a lot of yellow lines, maybe you have to widen the roads, and maybe there's no
So I
place to
will
widen.
oppose that also, because in 2005, I came to town meeting in October. And they made some one-way changes in the village of Sconset, and they took away certain yellow lines, and this was pushed by the then market owner, like Mark, and didn't want more parking. We had photos, we had data, they didn't listen to anyone that lived on these streets. So what they did is they took away the yellow lines, and now it is too narrow for vehicles to turn corners. My car was hit 2 different times by someone who said to me, it was either hit your car or hit the kids coming down the street on their bikes. Because those yellow lines sometimes provide buffer zones for pedestrians on these narrower streets. for pedestrians to get out of the way, for cars to allow two-way traffic. So it's really much more complex than just parking. There's like, you gotta look at sort of the flow of each street. It's in a whole nother study that you have to do.
So
Yeah, Don had his hand up, but
Whatever you do in the name of, creating more parking space or like, people then fill it up. So the answer, which I have heard now, public transportation. I have gone over this many years. You have to have very good public transportation. You know, and in fact, the answer is there, you made it free, and you have new buses. And the ridership went up.
it's free. It's free. That's the,
It's only till,
price,
only till
price is
September.
really nice.
Only till September.
It's a very.
Through the end of the year.
Yeah, the end of the year, that's good.
I want to answer Lou's question. Remind Libby that several years ago when I was chairman, I sent her, I think I sent it to you. I'm
You
pretty
did.
sure I did.
New York Botanical Gardens.
We did on the board. I'm on the board. I'm a trustee for the New York Botanical Gardens. And we had a parking issue. And so we decided to build an intermodal transportation facility. That's what we call it, parking garage, but we didn't call it that. We called it intermodal parking facility. And we put it up, and I have the slides, which, when we announced it, it's been a fabulous success. We are now netting over $1.5 million profit every year, which goes to the New York Botanical Gardens to support our operations. And in it, it's used for parking for people visiting the gardens. It's used for people going to the Montefiore Hospital or Lehman College nearby. The rent-a-car companies have taken space on the first floor because it's really convenient. And I said, that would be perfect here because we have rent-a-car companies that would love to have the ability to rent their cars from that. And it would be a blessing in the winter when all the seasonal people like us don't know what to do with our cars. Most people can't find an indoor place to park. I'm lucky I have one, but we could park those cars in the facility, for the 6 months, and you charge a decent fee. So it will be a real revenue producer. When people say we don't want a parking garage downtown, I say, you already have one. It's really ugly. It's called a National Grid lot. You already have it. Why are you saying you don't want anything downtown? You got it, and it's ugly. Why not get a beautiful? Anyway, I have to send that slide picture to Mike Burns, but I don't know if it's.
I remember when you sent that letter.
Yeah,
I remember that.
yeah. So it pays for itself.
This might be an item outside of your purview, but when a man is advertising, he will take your car for the state inspection because I still don't have my car inspected because every time I go, it's closed or the line's too long. And I think if I read the statistic right, there are 12,000 cars registered in Nantucket. So if they all need to
Two
be
spots, yeah.
inspected, there's no time for it. And I appreciate that this is not fun work for the two men who work there. I wish I could bribe them with sandwiches, but I don't think it would make a difference. And I just wonder if there's a possibility to ask the state for a second location or additional licensing or other facilities to handle this. I know I won't get a
You can't
ticket,
make a profit doing it.
but it's required by the state.
Motorcycles,
Yeah.
there's like a motorcycle guy that works at Don Allen. And on some days after he finishes his shift at Don Allen, he'll go over there after 5 to inspect motorcycles. Some days he doesn't do it. So my husband's been down there 10 times. Oh, he's not here today. I'm
Yeah.
excited to go home.
Don Allen will inspect your car if you are having it serviced,
Sure.
but now that they don't service a car that you didn't buy from them,
Or an
Well,
old
that's
car.
recent, but Donna.
that just happened last year because they can't keep up either.
This again is another example of either intended or unintended consequences, because another way of expanding inspections here is perhaps eliminating some of, within the first 3 years of the cars being sold as new. Is there really any
It's a state,
data
it's a
that
state, it's a
indicates?
state, it's a state issue though.
Well, I understand that. I understand
So,
it.
yeah.
But we're talking about even putting more inspection stations here is a state issue. Because they're state inspection stations, not town inspection stations.
But they're privately owned.
And there are a lot of states that have no inspection.
Yes, I mean,
Florida.
Yeah,
Florida
Florida,
has-
one.
Guys run around with fences. Paul,
And how many miles do you have to put on it?
But the issue is there any data that shows there's a value to all these inspections? Rather than just blindly having,
I think admissions is the biggest problem. That's the biggest issue that they wanted to inspect.
Yeah.
You know, here in the Northeast, we get all that smog from the Midwest. And
yeah.
think
It's the
that's the
biggest
major issue.
problem
What's
getting
it,
car
15 years
inspected.
old?
If you
Pennsylvania,
haven't
less
used
than so
emissions.
many miles.
But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I did.
No, that's.
It's like
Who,
We should, we.
Any other questions? Because
Just an update on what happened with respect to the issue of the car rental
Yes.
with Hertz having 1,000,
Driving.
and not using half of them. What's the story on that?
Okay, well, let me address that, and I want to make mention of a couple of things about the traffic and the state inspections. So at town meeting, there was a town warrant article and a citizen warrant article about motor vehicle rental agencies. And the citizen article basically wanted to legalize things like Turo. It didn't pass.
Right.
The town's article didn't pass either, and the town's article was intended to clarify who can get a rental vehicle license, and more specifically, how the medallions are issued. There are a limited number of medallions. So I guess we're supposed to be going back to revisit it and try to come up with something else. And again, that's controversial too, because there are people who love Turo, who
They can't afford it because the rates are ridiculous. here.
exactly. But it's not technically, it's a bit gray whether it's legal or not. We are now being sued by the citizen article sponsor to
Sure.
let them have a Turo-like operation. So it's ongoing. There is no resolution.
And Hertz still, I'm always amazed when I read the statistics that says half of the Hertz cars are not even used.
No, the
They're
medallion.
not even rented out.
Yeah, that we hear the same thing. So.
And the licenses don't get taken away, I guess.
Well, what we were trying to sort of clarify at town meeting was the medallions can be reissued yearly. So if you didn't use 100 of them, they can go to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that would be up to the select board to determine the distribution, but it didn't pass.
we got very briefly involved in that. Because one of the citizen articles was clearly discriminatory in terms of whether you
Could have
had
medallion.
a benefit because you were a permanent resident versus a non-voting taxpayer. Which we've written so much on this that
Yeah.
it's been applied to this area as well.
I wanted to quickly mention the state inspections. So we are getting a lot of complaints about the line. And the people on Pulpus Road where the line sometimes migrates over to are not happy with that. And, I've seen people out in the road and Donnell, it's just an unmanageable mess. So we were hoping they could maybe somehow do something electronically where they could take appointments. However, what we learned was the state will not allow that. I'm sure we could ask the Department of Motor Vehicles to get another inspection station here, but they're gonna say, well, where is it gonna be? Does the town have some property for that? And you have to have all the equipment and like an indoor place for them to do it. And I don't think we don't have the capacity to deal with that. So the advice I'm giving people, which I gave to myself, is when you are going to be going off island, plan a trip, the month of your inspection, and do it off island. It takes 10 minutes. There's never a line.
That's interesting.
What about extending the hours?
It's up to Don Allen. And I think I think that's been talked about too. They don't have the people. And they just can't deal with it. Back to a couple of the traffic things that were going on here. I like the idea of maybe we need to do a little bit of, I don't know how to do it, but maybe some of you all could think about even an analysis on why is there more traffic? How many more cars are there now than there were 20 years ago? There is an interesting, I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but I think it's factual and it's out there. There is potentially an increase in the number of vehicles because there are people who have driver's licenses now that weren't allowed to have driver's licenses a few years ago. So there's a theory that people who have come here from other countries perhaps can now get driver's licenses when they couldn't before, and maybe they are now driving. And there's many other reasons as well. There is an off-site parking lot, 2 fairgrounds. It's not good. It is admittedly, we are not managing it very well. The police chief and I and the transportation planner have had some recent discussions about how to improve that lot. And we've hopefully, I think, maybe landed on a gate system where they're probably, maybe you pay a fee after a certain period of time of being in there, but you can go in there for the day for free. And there was a shuttle that ran from the 2 fairgrounds lot downtown nonstop several years ago. Gary Roberts, the NRTA administrator, I believe is looking to reestablish that. I don't know if he quite has yet. We definitely need more NRTA service, not just more buses to get people on them, but more routes, and the routes need to be quicker.
How about running longer or later? I mean, all the workers
Yeah,
in the restaurants, they can't get there or they can't get home.
Yeah, that's an issue, and it's an issue of the drivers too, the NRTA drivers. We're gonna need more drivers. Paid parking is still kind of in the how are we gonna do this stage? And I think most recently, you probably know this already, but town meeting voted that if the select board is going to institute paid parking, they have to go back to town meeting for a vote. The select board has said, okay, what's it going to take to have paid parking? Like, how much is it going to cost? What would it look like? So we have been exploring. I mean, paid parking is very common in many places, and it's very easy. But sometimes it takes Nantucket a while to get used to something. And you don't have to have kiosks everywhere, but you do need some kiosks, and you have to have a pretty decent Wi-Fi situation to be able to pay online and stuff like that.
Forget Comcast.
The surcharge that you mentioned, that would not be possible without a home rule petition, and I would give that 0 chances of passing the legislature. Reducing the number of yellow lines, believe it or not, that there was an actual little internal study done on that, and it yielded maybe 10 spots. But that's already been basically done. And we talked about Turo. So I just want to give a little follow-up.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment? If you look at traffic on Sunday, there's not much.
Right.
There's very little. So that says to me that it's not the visitors or the tourists who are causing the traffic. It's the landscaping trucks. Yeah. It's the construction vehicles. It's all the electricians' trucks. One thing we might want to consider is the one thing with landscapers, they come to your house, wherever it is, and they mow your lawn, and a half hour later, they're back in their truck going across the island or downtown to do my house, and then they go out to Sconset to somebody else's. Maybe what we have to think about is saying that certain kinds of work can only be done on certain days in certain areas. So for example, landscaping in Sconset can only be done on Monday. So therefore, all of the landscaping trucks, and for one day, it's going to be a hassle.
To get to Scott's.
Friday, didn't want Friday.
There's some way of controlling the movement of these mostly landscaping vehicles, because they're moving around 10 or 12 times a day.
Function that way. You're just seeing different trucks for the same company. I know my landscaper only cuts lawns in Wisconsin on Thursday and Friday. He does, because those crews are there. Those crews are somewhere else another day. So they've already figured that out.
They figured it out to some extent, but we don't, but your guy may be a lot smarter than most of the others.
But
You
I
don't
think that's
know how they
true.
operate.
It's
Well-
the UPS man who says, I have a delivery in Sconset, and then they're sending me to Eel Point, now I'm gonna go to Mattakit, and there's no planning.
Really, I'm surprised.
And
Oh,
that-
that I'm
surprised.
shocked,
I'm
because
really
UPS
surprised. Yeah.
requires cars only to make right turns. That's part of it, because left turns take a lot
Yeah.
longer to make.
But
Not on the island, this is a general.
coordinating would be very challenging.
But you do bring up a good point about the big trucks, and we talked about this last meeting too. The trucks could be off the road between 11 and 2, or not even that long, but if there's big construction trucks, and there are, if they're cut off the road by 10 o'clock, you're gonna have a lot less congestion in my mind. And I don't have a study to prove that, but other than I've experienced it.
The other thing that this thought might do is noise is another big problem, particularly in town or in Wisconsin. And if you limit the landscapers to only Monday and Tuesday, then at least the rest of the week, you won't hear all that weed whacking and other noise. I'm just trying to say that you're not going to control the number of cars, because people are somehow going to figure out how to get around that. But maybe setting up certain rules about when certain work can be done in certain parts of the town may be a way of
Maybe
thinking
the chief
about it.
enforcer.
Yeah. Before we let me get away.
Going back to what Patty is saying, the construction vehicles, they keep getting larger and larger. And that is a problem, and they take up like 3 or 4 cars lengths now. And our roads are narrow. There are gonna be accidents. I mean, if you've got construction trucks going both ways, coming and going, sooner or later, they're gonna start hitting you.
This is, I think we're getting to a level of detail that is somewhat too fine. Because we can't even agree on the big issues, I think we ought to be, maybe not at 50,000, but at least at, 25,000 feet.
But I just asked,
here.
going back to the windmill thing, is the federal government helping you at all? And is there any thought of Nantucket suing to at least delay, if not take down, the continuation of these windmills? I mean, would a suit from us based on environmental information from the federal government give a stoppage to the continuation of the windmills?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody can definitively say whether it would stop it or not. It would be costly. So I think we want to understand what we're getting into before we would do something like that, and whether or not we have very solid information. But I'm sure that is being discussed.
Is there a meeting coming up? I thought there was a public meeting this week, possibly.
At the board meeting this week, it's one of the first items on the agenda.
With
just in-
representatives of the.
Yeah.
But this was considered like a manufacturing defect also, wasn't that
Yeah.
coming out? So,
Yeah.
it's kind of a double-edged sword, because these wind farms work in many countries and in many places, and there are some benefits to Nantucket in terms of energy generation and the savings when this energy could be brought here.
Yeah.
On the flip side, obviously, the manufacturer has an issue. I'm not sure suing Vineyard Wind is the solution to the manufacturer.
I think Brooke Moore asked the key question, which has still not been answered,
Yeah.
probably the first question out of her mouth. Is this a regular occurrence?
Yeah.
Or not? And
Or an
and
anomaly.
one of the problems is that I've looked for the data, and there's not refined data that just talks about blade failure. It's usually failure of the whole thing, which may be a blade failure or something else. But this manufacturer, GE and subsidiary, ought to be able to forecast and answer that question. Of course, they didn't forecast what happened here. But I'm
They need to
with you,
figure out why
the
it happened.
benefits
Yes.
likely outweigh the detriments. And we just need to understand what all the detriments are and how often they are
And
likely.
I
to
also think that because of some of the already ongoing objections to the project, we only needed one thing to go wrong. for it to escalate.
Yeah.
One of the.
Everybody's been doing the same thing.
I attended one of the select board meetings, I guess it was last week, when the topic was the wind farm. And what came to light is these, towers are the largest in the world and they have not been constructed anywhere else. So this is an experiment.
I wouldn't go
And I
that
think,
far. You know, progress is gonna happen. And there are always, you know, risks in anything you do. What we are likely to, well, I can't predict what we find out, but there's an investigation ongoing and either it's gonna yield an answer or not.
well,
But we can get to that answer here, that's for certain. Yeah.
the one thing that we really have to focus on too is, yeah, we can stay out of the water, but the whales and the fish can't. I mean, what's whole
There's a
is.
lot of
our
water
neighbor.
and one blade right now, but
Well,
anyway, and there apparently aren't any whales in the area.
one of the.
They're in New
They
Hampshire.
licensed it. So I think you'd like to go home and unless anybody has any burning.
It's not too bad.
That's not an admonition, by the way. You know,
No, it's fine.
this has been, I think, one of the best,
Well, good.
you know, meetings that we've had. And I think it could all be due to you. And I'm saying that because, this, I think, is the second year in the many years that I've been involved, and certainly Gary, that we've had the benefit of a full table here.
Difference.
And it really has benefited in terms of the exchange of ideas and the richness of the ideas in a great thing. And you're the appointing authority. So we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for sending them for recruiting. You did a great recruiting.
You know,
effort.
there's mutual benefit society
Yeah.
going on here.
And I have your next person. I'll get
Great,
on them.
great.
this
Yeah.
very soon.
I've let him know that he's, you
Yeah.
know, it's a popular committee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I'm gonna do the town perhaps a favor, I hope. I'm having a dinner on Wednesday, at least scheduled, with someone who I haven't met before, but he's a new homeowner in Nantucket. And he successfully sued BP for won billions of dollars for the BP oil spill.
Ah,
And when I see him on Wednesday night, I'm gonna ask him whether or not he might consider advising, or at least meeting with some of the town officials to talk about what kind of rights that we may have based on he did the oil spill.
Yeah.
Before that, he was suing the tobacco company, so.
Good.
And he had just bought a home on Easton Street, so
oh, wow.
I'll see if he's going to talk to the town.
I can't believe that you are hanging out with plaintiff's lawyers.
Right. I haven't met him yet.
Okay, so I think we should,
And the one, we
Yeah.
never talked about the speed restrictions, right, guys, you had brought that up earlier, and I just wondered where that's going, it's pretty frightening to me.
we're trying not to put speed restrictions on the wheels.
Right.
No, no.
I wanted to go
On a
faster
steamship.
than the ferry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I just didn't know if there's any hope that that's gonna get changed.
Well, I think we have some hope for it. It wouldn't hurt for people to continue sending letters in. We are awaiting an economic impact study. Hopefully it'll be done within the next 2 weeks that we can send in to the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, and we are thinking about requesting another consultation. Town agencies, town departments have had several consultations with them, but all it is you call in and read, they don't ask you any questions. They just say, who's in the room? It's by conference call. It's not even on Zoom. And you basically give statements, and we've had statements from police, fire, public works, town, select board, planning. I know Steamship has had one, hospitals had one. I think the chamber was gonna have one. There's been a bunch
Woods Hole,
and Woods Hole.
New England Aquarium.
What's
Oh,
our,
good.
what's our congressman having to say about this?
Keating's office assures us, and we have been working with particular person there, that the congressman has our best interests in tow in mind. And he has written a couple letters asking for a waiver for Nantucket. That's the important thing to get across to people. We're not asking that the restrictions be thrown out. We're asking, please waive Nantucket Sound. The impact on Nantucket is devastating, is not even a strong enough word.
Yeah.
It's just it blows my mind that they would even consider that.
Well,
I mean,
I said
what to eat.
when this.
But I'll ask you this philosophical question right now. When you're asking Nantucket, what are its interests? And you've got everybody saying we should get rid of wind farms because of the whales. And the same people saying, oh, but when I'm affected personally, then the hell with the whales. Really, it's a mind-boggling situation. And I fear for the whales because I think they're being used unfairly in both instances.
So
Well, maybe you ought to represent them.
They don't pay.
They don't.
Yeah, they don't.
That's like a lot of your clients, right?
Yeah, but thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
You guys so much, very much appreciated.
See you next year.
You've had other departments have come in?
Yeah,
we have Mike.
It's hard to keep track because everybody keeps leaving
I
and
know.
you have new people in it.
I know.
Usually, the first year they're here, it doesn't pay to have them here.
Oh, we're gonna have the police chief, but we are having the police chief.
Well, we had the
Yes.
fire
Yeah.
chief last year.
Yeah, we had Mike, we had Mike.
Okay.
Mike Burns
He's
was
coming in
We had the fire chief last
last
year.
year.
Yes.
We had the
definitely.
transportation guy.
We've had a series of DPW people.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think the one we have now is a keeper.
They're doing they're doing a much, they're doing a visibly, a noticeably bit better
Thank
deal.
you for
Yeah.
saying
I mean,
that.
for as incidental as going down Prospect Street and pulling out the fencing, where the fences come down and.
Oh, yeah, fixing the.
Yes,
Oh, good.
amazing.
Good.
And they get the lights, and the lights are going
The
out.
the streetlights have been plaguing us for a long time.
Got those back.
Because they have to be,
National Grid has to do it.
well, National Grid has to do some of it. But there's parts of it that they won't do, and then we have to do it. And sometimes we have to get an electrician, try to get one. They're,
Tell us.
yeah, they're really difficult, they're really expensive.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I was just thinking, and even maybe if you all were interested in talking about like a little thing, like LED streetlights. I could talk this over, let me know what you think, like LED streetlights, we have been having some discussions about this, and there's the Nantucket Lights,
Tail Walk,
night sky.
which started from the Civic Association and is trying to get Sconset to change all the town lights by going to the Sconset Trust and the Civic Association to pay for them. Because you'll also save, you'll be able to dial down the light. You could save up to 50% of your electricity. And this is the advantage of getting National Grid. I know she wanted the town to take this over
Yeah,
because it costs millions of dollars, but it pays for itself. But
yes,
there's only so many pots of gold.
exactly, and somebody has to manage the whole thing
Yeah.
and
But
blah, blah, blah.
this would be a great
Yeah.
initiative for us to help
Maybe
the
you can
town.
tell us what we should be doing then.
Well, Gail's a great speaker.
Yeah.
You'll love her. She's a past Department of Justice attorney, so it's all good.
A good person.
Another lawyer.
No
to
experienced
come.
person. That's great. No, this night sky thing has been terrific, and I was really suspicious of it at the beginning, but
She spoke.
I've been changing all my life, so
She spoke here.
makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah. for sure. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go this way. Gary.
Okay, sure.
So, the next item on the agenda is Town Council Study Commission. I think we've got some You can't escape now, Donna.
She's not going.
Pardon?
Town Council Study Committee is up.
Oh,
Everything we heard.
well, I
I think we got the gist.
We got the gist.
Yeah.
And I think, I wanted to bring it up because this would be an opportune time to discuss what's going on.
Yeah.
Like that.
So I understand the issue with the, what we, after the last meeting, we wrote up a very short, sweet, possible charter section that basically was aimed at a non-voting seat on a town council for non-voting taxpayers.
Right.
And it just kind of that simple. And it was met with a lot of non-support. And I think the chairman felt that he wouldn't support that, but I guess he put it forward for people to look at and think about. And then Donna said, well, can the state advisor to the Town Council Study Commission look into what other towns have non-voting taxpayers on their council and how it works, how it's been received.
And,
So I think that's a good thing.
yeah, and if not, if they can come up with a suggestion
But
as to a position, but.
so what when I was hearing, I thought from you, and that's what my question to you is, we put this in the box of non-voting member of council as a, still something that is, on life support, but it's there because nothing's happened with it yet. But I thought you were suggesting that there needs to be an office in town government that, and apparently not, that has non-voting taxpayers as a main focus, as a group. But maybe that was not your suggestion.
I wasn't suggesting
No.
an office, a position. Whether or not that's going to be an office, but.
It would be in the organization chart.
In the
When I say
organization
office,
chart,
I mean,
a
it would be
position,
a part of town government. That
Ancillary part of.
that would have a role of looking and thinking about this.
Right, yes, and that is something even that Libby is. Going to pursue, and then, as you heard, I'm going to assist her in doing some research on that.
No, I think another thing too would be to have consideration whenever committees are being formed.
Yeah.
Well, that is that one that's the relevant one to ask.
But they do that today.
Oh, right, but just to have that in the charter or something, in other words, something that it's on the frontal lobe rather than.
Well, that goes back to my original position analysis, which is that and we have an existing part in, I guess, our charter, which is the bylaw that establishes this committee. I had done a draft, which I think probably in retrospect is a little too aggressive. And so I'll do a redraft for consideration. Because the point being that when a new charter comes out, we need to have something about non-voting taxpayers in it. At a bare minimum, it needs to be the same as what we have now.
It will be, that's already.
That's
there.
good.
That's it,
Okay.
that is, what I'm trying to do is increase our visibility, increase our activity
Peter,
in
Sure.
a possible new government.
I mean, I think it's too early. It's certainly too early to give up on what we're asking for. And look, we know it's aspirational what we're asking for. We've got to keep the pressure on right now. Let's see what they come up with this study group comes up with. We may have more influence. What Libby suggested is something that a lot of us are doing in sort of informally, but this idea of studying particular issues. I mean, that's how we did the SDR thing. I mean,
Yeah.
and we had some influence. I mean, if we start picking out some key issues the parking is a good one. This parking deck issue is a good one. No one else is doing it. They're just sitting on their hands. We could put together a study of our own and really make a presentation and move this along if we want to do that. So I think if we start picking our places, we can, and doing this our work ourselves, we may have just as much, if not more influence.
Well, that's what I'm going to be doing for getting back to town council. Is I've just offered to assist in getting some research together for her, for Libby. And also that will help in tandem with what's going on with town council. I would disagree. It's not on life support. It's very much alive. It's an issue, and we are going to be discussing it next week again. And now that Libby is going to be a little more focused on it, I'm encouraged. We're not giving up. We're going to pursue this.
Yeah,
Go back to what we want is interesting, but not particularly relevant to the government and the voters in that town. You know, there may be some, something, but we have no claim on power. What we do have, and I think the case we need to make is why it is in the voters' interest to have a strong and coherent and educated voice on matters and where that can help them. And certainly what we're just talking about is an element of it. They're also, I'll tell you, the Dormant Commerce Clause thing, they were walking right into a real problem there. And I think maybe people might acknowledge that these days. Certainly town council looked on it, right?
You finally did.
Yeah, but we need to build that case on why. Not that we want it, not that we're paying all this money, that's all, we chose that, but what we can do to help improve and make more efficient and better the process of governance in the town. And that's why you want us around, not because we deserve it.
No, we don't deserve it.
But because we could be materially helpful in a lot of different things.
Right, in that regard, I mean, my gut tells me the reason that it got the sort of its instant down, negative reception is because people's reaction is, the flip side of that is they just want to interfere in our life, and that's, it's us versus them kind of thing. We've always talked about this. We need to get clear that this is not, if it's us versus them, we've lost. Yeah, we've lost.
It's not us versus them. Yeah, I agree. It's really, we have common interests and we want to participate in that process.
And Donna's done a great job of relaying that in those meetings, because I've been sitting in as her alternate, and I will say, I vehemently got upset at the last meeting when one of the people on the committee sort of totally put down the non-voting taxpayers. But the reality is in a town council structure, anybody could go into a council meeting and voice their opinions, and they don't have to say, I'm a non-voting taxpayer. They are taxpayers. They're not going to differentiate, so we all have a voice in terms of independently, but I think Donna's making a very good case for the collaborative, and I love, Peter, your ideas. The more helpful we can be with some of these, with providing some backup. Libby doesn't have enough people to do this kind of work.
Yeah,
So we are increasing our value if we're willing to delve into issues and address them.
I think it will be really of great importance if there can be developed some factual information that other towns have adopted a policy of having more non-voting taxpayer involvement in their town councils. Because that makes people instantly more comfortable. That they're not, walking off the end of the plank without any precedent. So that will be really good. What I've tried to do in terms of selling, access to this committee, even in the non-voting, this committee meaning the Town Council Study Commission, because initially we had no place on it. We thought we were going to get a place. And we had no place, and then we got a non-voting place. And the selling point is typically been twofold. And this is from the seller's point of view. I have no idea what the buyers are thinking of these arguments. Is that we have experiences because most of us live in places with town councils, and Nantucket is not a place with the town council. And so we have experience with the town council form of government, and that ought to be helpful to people trying to figure out what to do next. And secondly, that we're basically collegial people. We're not argumentative people, and we work well with others. And so far, that may not be entirely true. But,
We made the same thing.
But I think, Scott, that you're absolutely right. You know, we're selling, and the question is, what does the market want? And I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, which is a very effective, nimble, representative form of government. Certainly, the interests of the government are satisfying not just the people who live here year round, but people who contribute to the overall well-being of the island.
And I think we have to convince through various means that we actually have a lot to offer, whether it's on traffic or parking or whatever it is. I think it's a great idea to take one particular issue and, I mean, make and sort of convince the select board as well as the voters that the people who came up with this idea, and there are thousands of others like us who live here, who are willing to help, who pay taxes, who have good ideas, who can help make a difference, and then we just have to sell it.
Well, you can see this developing into an expertise bank. I mean, it's not just us sitting around the table, but obviously, it's a very the non-voting taxpayer group is a very well-educated group of people with a lot of expertise and a lot of various things, walks of life, and it might be interesting to sort of try to catalog some of that stuff. And I think we could really, and that would enhance our, I mean, look, not to blow our own horn here, but the STR issue, and I think you're absolutely right, Scott, and I've seen this across the simple Dormant Commerce Clause thing has created a recognition and acceptance. I can go offline. I can tell you, I mean, it's amazing. All of a sudden, being invited as now we're one of them because we all of a sudden they saw the light that what we were proposing wasn't crazy. It was proper. It was right, and I think we just need to do more of that.
Well, there is a great virtue in being right.
When everybody else
and getting to the right answers is the real challenge for this group, because we do have different views on a lot of issues, and some of which, whether it's Wales or something else, it's hard to coalesce into a single position. So I think, we have to focus on those areas where we can at least have a strong majority in favor of something, and it's a position that is not just in our interest, but in the interest of the entity that we're trying to persuade.
Well, going along with that, why don't we just had a wonderful session with Libby. Why don't we choose something, either this meeting or the next meeting, as to something that we'd like to focus on as a committee and do what we are talking about?
Yeah, but I like the idea
Let's select a topic.
I like the idea of a skills inventory.
Yeah.
And just
we can also get it out there. I mean, we just
well, also to Libby's question of, I'd like to give you some stuff to work on. Well, maybe the first stage of that is, a couple of pages of this just happens to be some of the expertise.
Right.
Running on.
I mean, she has all of our.
No, it's just us. No, it's just us. I'm talking about, we're talking about going way, we're talking about every non-voting taxpayer.
Okay.
I mean, for example, Jean just reminded me, we have a mutual friend or acquaintance here who probably owns the largest private parking network in the country, Laz Parking. He's a resident. He's a non-voting.
Two of them,
Well, the brothers.
Brother.
But along with what you've done, Gary and others. I mean, so just the parking issue alone is one. I mean, but there are plenty of others.
That's great. Thank you.
So I think what we can do, and perhaps we really heard today a couple of the issues that are vexing to Libby, and that she thinks that they could use more help on. Parking apparently is one of them. And maybe it's an exchange of communications that says, thanks for being here, and we were thinking that perhaps it would be helpful if we focus on A, B, and C, or whatever.
What would you suggest?
But also, Peter, those are big bangs for the buck.
Are these the right targets? And then what sort of depth and commitment? And then, the flip side of this is we're gonna have to belly up and do some work. And we're fortunate that we've had some horses, but it's, typically, there'll be some people that are more committed to things than other people, but we need at least have it so that there's just not one or two people doing everything.
But the other thing is for the exposure of this committee, taking on something like traffic safety and parking has such a major impact on the entire island. It's not just the non-voting taxpayers, everyone's miserable. I mean, now that Libby's back on her feet, let her go sit in that traffic. She's been hiding since the beginning of July. She doesn't see
But
it.
at least now we know why. But then it's this, another vexing problem. You've got everybody is up in the air about parking, right? Of course, there are lots of facets, but doing something about parking is good. This other thing that came up, which was the inspections. I'm not sure what we can supply on inspections, but
train ourselves. to be
everybody's
inspectors.
vexed by the same thing, and anything positive would be
I
good.
guess I have to go. One day.
Peter, would
I don't know.
you, following that, could you, put together a response to Libby, thanking her for her time and discussion.
Yeah.
Anyway, and ask, is there one thing, I mean, start small. Is there one thing that you would like our resources
I
to?
usually like to ask for two or three,
Okay.
in case that one thing really is not going to resonate with anybody here.
I mean, we're all gonna roll up our sleeves and work on it. But I am doing it for the town council and for us.
Yes.
So I'm already gonna be working
Yeah.
on that. And I'll keep everybody advised of what's going on there. But ask her, just say,
Yeah.
okay, what a few things would you like us to focus on to assist you?
I'll do that, and when the police chief comes, we can discuss this a little bit further, and it may be, one of the issues that I'm having with the public meeting laws is exactly how much communication can go on outside of the meeting. What I've tried to do is communicate with less than a quorum of people. And I think that seems to be the thing. And I think you can't do it seriatim either.
No.
Yeah, so if some of you get something from me, it's because I think you're more interested in it than others, and I'm trying to keep it to less than a quorum. And I think that it just needs to be sort of in general our own rule, because I'm not the only person capable of violating the public meeting law. But I think that some communication outside of the meetings, just to keep things like this, rolling along, is absolutely necessary.
Well, can I just ask you, how
Maybe you're not
close
allowed to
is the
send an
committee
email
to,
subject to the
No.
whole committee.
determining what
Unless you make it
a
public.
representative
Unless you make it
of government?
Uh,
In other words,
and
would
so-
you ever be?
How do you make it
um,
public?
So I think we're done on town
voter at
council
lar- or
for the time
a
being.
representative at large?
And
Talking at that
the
level, yeah.
quick update on the
Yes, that's what we're
SDM,
trying to do.
FGM.
That's
which
what
we
we're trying
sort
to
of
Trying to
had,
come up
but
with how you determine whether the
All right,
representatives
where
are
do we stand?
voted or by district or.
Ladies,
Oh, that,
Yeah.
okay,
okay,
in general,
if I could interrupt this and
okay, the on the SDR situation, the only thing that I've been doing, I was asked to sit in with the group that has put forward the compromise that now has been endorsed by the town council, the planning committee, and the finance committee. And they're in the process now of trying to work together to try to quote unquote sell this, you know, and unfortunately, you know, it's gone down to defeat, I think, 5 times effectively over the course of time. So it is unfortunately a bit of a sales job. That's less of a role. I mean, I have not purposely gotten involved with that, except to the extent that they are trying now to meet with other groups within, I mean, for example, Kathy, Nantucket Together group, they're going to try to meet with, to try to see if there's any, you know, where the friction might even still be with this thing, to try to get more people behind it. They feel, I mean, you would think that this, you know, this compromise, which came from the groups that had competing positions at the last town annual town meeting, would now, since at least two of the 3 groups have come together, would now move this thing forward. Who knows? So we still have the outlier remains, for lack of a better term, the sort of the some of the Act Now group. You saw Peter McFarland. The letters unfortunately are reminiscent of other, let's put it this way, of other more national political leaders who put out these statements with no basis of any sort with them, and just to stir up the crowd kind of thing, and then you're fighting, you know, constantly fighting to pull back, you know. They're all, but there's always going to be that group, and you got to get 2/3 votes. So that's basically, that's where we are. This will go. The town meeting's coming up. I mean, we're less than a month away. No, a little bit over a month, September 17th. So it's coming. We'll see. I mean, I must say I'm not a betting man, and if I were, I'm not sure I'd bet that this would go through either.
So speaking of the annual town meeting, and Peter is going to be on the island for that, and I think he will be there as our representative of this group. So we're covered there.
Just let her know, but you need to let the top, what's her name?
Oh, yeah, I'll write to the moderator.
Sarah.
So they make sure they have a chair for you.
Right size.
Usually it's a chair, they have a button that they can push. Yeah. So that's good. What I'd like to do is, we've actually had a discussion of current issues, concern of non-registered excavators. What are our priorities? I think we've we've done that with Libby today, and that's a continuing discussion that we're having. The next thing on the agenda is daytime amplified noise bylaw amendments. And in general, you know, Lynn last time brought up I think there's some very modest noise amendments that a group in the Civic League are working on. And then Lou has brought up, and I think I heard a lot of support from this group last time on the issue of amplified noise. And the specific example in Tom Nevers is there's a public park over there, and people tend to congregate. That's what the purpose of the public park is. But they bring in, you know, sophisticated
amplifiers
and big speakers, and it's almost like you have a
jazz club
entertainment,
playing whatever kind of music for extended time during the day, which projects and intrudes on the neighboring properties in the area. I think probably that is something that needs to be addressed yet again. The question is, how do you address it in a way that because addressing it is basically changing the noise bylaw here. That requires the annual town meeting to approve the changes.
Is there a permitting requirements for amplify? Like, say it wasn't a speaker, say it was a wedding out at the park in Tom Nevers with a band.
A wedding would need a permit.
They would need a permit. So you would think that that's almost like a DJ with, you know, so you would think they would need a permit in a way.
The question is, what else is going on with that wedding? Because at some point it may need a special permit.
Well, I'm just saying the guys with the speakers, you can interpret them as like a DJ.
One thing I wrote up, and in my mea culpa before about circulating things to part of the group but not all. I wrote up a very brief brief being, I think, 6 pages.
Yeah.
Of, what does the current bylaw, state? And what other towns have an amplified state daytime noise bylaw? Our current, bylaw covers amplified noise, but only between the hours of like 10 at night and 7 in the morning or whatever. So we have a bylaw, and it's a matter of just changing a couple of words in that bylaw to extend it into the daytime. So I'm gonna hand this to, Madam Secretary.
Okay.
And perhaps she will include it with the minutes, and then you can read it over and see what you think and, discuss. This is in black and white. Unfortunately,
I got
what I sent around in, on the computer is in red and black. So you can, the changes are red, so I'm gonna have to do something to highlight the changes, but basically it will be creating a daytime, extending the amplified noise bylaw into daytime hours. And I didn't do a complete review of Massachusetts towns, but I picked the one most favorable to, tamping down the noise, which is Marlborough, Massachusetts. And basically it says that during the daytime hours, and I can't remember what they are, doesn't matter. You can have amplified noise on your playground or whatever, but it cannot go beyond, the noise cannot be a nuisance beyond 25 feet from the source of that noise.
That's
So
what
that it, you're in
decibel
the
level.
immediate area enjoying whatever the music is, you're not being interfered with. And if you're living adjacent to that area, in theory, you're not being interfered with. But what you're not having to do is, ear shattering noise probably in either circumstance. That may or may not be the right way to do it, but it's a starting point, I think, for at least us to look at and think about, how you can solve it. Because apparently I was out at Katuitt Point, I think it is, out in the sort of wildlife reserve there. And even people fishing on the rocks are setting up amplified music, disturbing the peace in the area.
Fish like it. though.
Yeah.
No, they
They're
didn't.
trying to stay away from-
No, you're thinking it makes it-
I hear the station whistle. Noise really carries out
We
there.
can hear it.
I have a question. Is everybody hearing like loud radio, car radios lately?
But
I don't seem to be noticing that.
That happens every so often.
No,
Yeah, they usually come and go.
Well, they do come and go.
F-154 pickups.
Yeah.
But it's
When it's
people are
under 25.
blasting their radios as they're.
This again, we're getting into the weeds. I think we have a sort of a big problem that is maybe soluble, but then when you try to take it down to every different iteration of it, maybe we're just going too far. Because all of a sudden everybody figures, oh my God, now I'm not gonna be able to do my
To play the
favorite
radio.
thing, which is to deafen myself when I'm driving the car.
Well, it kind of started as a public park issue.
Yeah.
And beach, and now it's broader. It would include, putting up a 4-foot speaker on my front lawn.
Yeah.
So it's residential as well as long as it's very specific in the bylaw to cover, public parks, beaches, private.
Yeah, well,
There is a
look at
delineation here.
Look at the bylaw.
I read it and I'm not a lawyer, so
Yeah,
I had to read it
it's kind of
several times.
wishy-washy.
What?
Because I do agree that it should cover more than the issue that Lou raised,
Right,
and that is the noise in the public parks. It should also cover the noise between my house and your house. And,
Right.
That we. That
But
has been a
specifically-
politically difficult issue, for example.
but specifically for amplified noise.
The amplified noise,
Right.
because where it has been, I think, consistently almost voted down, or maybe it even didn't get to a vote, has been things like pool equipment and air conditioners. Making noise across property lines.
Well, and the town
Yeah.
can work on where the pool equipment goes. So
Yeah,
you'll see now with
Yeah.
pool plans in front of the HDC, the equipment is not on the property line.
You have to put in a revetment or you put
Yeah.
a fence around it, or
So
whatever.
they've handled it
Yeah.
on their own terms.
So Mike, would you do two things?
Yes.
Your comment and then introduce yourself.
Well, I was gonna say, I must apologize. I need to leave in a few minutes.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
7-year-old grandson is flying in from New York, so I need to pick him up.
That's good.
So, let me tell you a little bit about my background before I duck out. I actually was raised on Nantucket. I graduated from high school in 1967. Went in the army and spent a couple of years in summer camp at Southeast Asia. And never came back to Nantucket until about 20 years ago, and we bought a house on Milk Street. So I'm probably somewhat unique in that I'm a non-resident voter, but I actually know a lot of the clowns that dominate some of the Nantucket discussions that you've had at the town meeting. I grew up with them. I retired 5 years ago from Raytheon, and at Raytheon, I ran strategy, corporate development, and all their international activities. Particularly in Afghanistan and the Middle East. I was there for 20 years. Prior to that, I was with EMC, and I ran all of their strategy and corporate development at EMC, and wanted to join the group to give something back because Nantucket's been very, very good to me and my family. And my brother-in-law used to be chairman of the Board of Selectmen down here.
Who's that?
For Jim Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and I still have a sister and a brother that live on Nantucket, so I'm the only one of us that has moved off island and come back with a summer home. So that's my background. And I'm glad to join you, and I hope to work with you in any way I can. And I apologize for ducking out early, but my grandson, I don't want him to be hanging around the airport
No.
without me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining.
Yeah.
Well, you never know. Thank you very much.
No, they've been reading. So we just had one.
So, did anybody have any first
Michael.
thoughts on the noise? I think you saw what
I saw what you put together and I could easily, with what you put together, take care of my problem. But I think there's more problems than just that. I think if we can discuss this a little further, and maybe suggest an article be put up on, by the town council before the voters. I don't think it's too late probably for this year, but there's something that we should discuss and consider doing.
Yeah.
You get it in by, I think it's on November,
November.
or, so it's not too late. It's not too late.
It's not too late.
So it's not
It happens
for
in the
May.
spring.
It's not too
Yeah.
late for May.
It could, ideally, it would be a select board article if we could get it, as a select board article. And I certainly don't have the context, but maybe Mike does, for a citizen article.
I think the select board, when they put an article up, it has a lot better chance of passing.
Yeah.
Citizens articles, a little tougher to get through.
It's
What's the relationship between what you're talking about and what the Civic League is doing?
So, well, it's some of the civic association people putting this together, because not everyone in the Civic League will say, go do your thing. But their analysis will put it together. They have our support, and they would go to Libby because they want it to be a town sponsored article, because they know it has a much better chance.
Would they be amenable to adding some words touching about the amplified
I'm
noise?
sure I can share that
Yeah.
with them,
If
so,
somebody's gonna put an article forward,
Absolutely.
let's not try
Right.
to do two of them.
so,
The big issue on this noise stuff, though, is you only want to put it together if everything in what is
Acceptable.
likely to pass.
Right.
You don't want to marry part that's likely to pass with a part that's not likely to pass. Because then you're in the worst.
you're just saying you're fine tuning the article where you
Might have
see.
modest amendments.
And
Yeah.
there were some date changes in that article I was gonna talk to Tom about, like, I wasn't sure why he was shifting from a September 15th back to a September 6th on some, or.
Only because it matched other things in the article, and that it would be easier to get the construction people to agree to a tighter July, August. So that was just the starting
I thought
discussion point.
September 15th was a nice endpoint for much of that.
Then you have to change the other part. So it's making one more conservative. Tom, I don't think is going to be working on this.
I will say noise is a very hard thing to enforce, and I know this will raise some issues, but I'm gonna share a little quick story. 2 years ago, some major changes were made on the driving range at St. D Club. And they took out some brush that acted as a sound barrier. So all of a sudden, my husband and I started noticing all this noise and brush cutting and things going on. It went on for a good chunk of the summer. Very early in the morning, we finally contacted them. And we were told last summer that they would pick up the driving range walls in the evening rather than at early in the morning. I asked, could you also mow because right across the street from my house, can you also mow the driving range in the morning or in the afternoon when you're all done? Well, it would be getting dark. Now we all know it's not dark at 7 in the summer. Flash forward, a few weeks later, we're hearing the engines fire up at 5 a.m. We can smell the propane, and we look out the window and we see a little headlight because they're mowing in total darkness. Some investigation went on between their attorney and my attorney, and they discovered that golf clubs are not exempt from the noise ordinance.
Good.
Which is very interesting because we know they all have to mow early and get ready. And I don't think there's a whole lot of objection to them doing their greens and everything else, but they have some very large equipment that they use on common areas and the driving range. This week it started at 4:45. So I'm going back into discussions with them because they offered me, even though they're breaking the law, they offered me a compromise this spring.
A membership of it.
No.
That's worth something.
I think the thing was, they came to me and they said, okay, we're not gonna start mowing until 6 on the driving range instead of closer to 5. And we will work from the top down. So by the time we get close to the street, you're sort of covered. Well, that worked too until about 2 weeks ago when they started at 4:45 again. So there's a lot of give and take. We're trying to be like good neighbors, but also, I have to say to myself, they have a lot of money at that club. Maybe there's a sound dampener that can go on a certain lawnmower. Maybe there's certain types of equipment that violate decibel levels. Like, I think the whole noise ordinance, it's not just my problem, but it goes on everywhere on the island. And I think like what goes on at the Nantucket Golf or my Comet may be different in terms of where the houses are in proximity, and maybe since they took down a brush barrier, they have to put up a sound barrier, and then we get into like when Baxter Road moves its infrastructure of electric and sewers to the other side of the bike path, is that going to cause them to take down even more of the natural brush that noise is like a vicious circle. And I have been working on this for 2 years with them. And we're trying to keep it as to a theory, like, how do we make this work so that you can have your operation, but I don't have to wake up at 4:45 every morning to a dog barking or a baby crying because I don't have to smell propane. The fact that I have a house on Nantucket where I cannot open my windows at night when it's not this hot because the noise is so deafening, and I have video recordings of it and they know something's going on. It's a really hard nut to crack. And I think if we propose something that pushes it back to 8, then we got a whole nother thing we got to work with, so maybe 7:30 was the ideal time. Maybe September 15th is the ideal time. I mean, I do not call the police when a wedding runs late, but I do call the police now just to have it on record.
Yeah, it's important to do, because otherwise the first defense is, we checked with the police department, there are no complaints.
Right.
But the other thing that you have to watch out for in this thing is that the select board has the power to waive these requirements. And you see all year long, there'll be like a special bill, for want of a better term, from a utility company or something else.
And they can do that if they have a specific project that they have to finish. Yeah.
So so you take a look at this noise thing, of course, it's this amplified noise. It's
That's not amplified noise.
No, this is landscaping noise, technically.
This is amplified.
Landscaping equipment.
Can I ask you where your house, I'm just curious how where your house is compared to the golf course?
So it turns out that my house is directly across from the driving range. So I'm at
You're at the
97
back,
Sankaty.
back.
Not instead of Sankaty.
Yes, yeah. So if you're on the driving range hitting balls, you would be facing the Roosevelts, my house, and my next door, my
So
other
you
next
get
door.
balls too coming into the yard?
No,
No, they can't get that. far.
And do the
Nobody
police,
gets
do
that.
the police
Nobody would.
just make a note of it?
Well, it's interesting because who can the police talk to? They're the grounds crew. They are just following orders from the management. And their orders are not to mow the range before 6. And I'm very happy with that. It doesn't take them that long. It's like 40 minutes of work. At 6 a.m., I don't object to it. At 4:50, I do because, it kind of kills your whole day.
Yeah, no, we've got Miles Reese coming to our neighbors, which is as far as away as you and I are, with bottles at 5:15.
Yes, exactly.
And we've called Miles Reese twice
Yes.
and
The same thing is happening with the summer house and Tom's house, which is, some of the pickup of this stuff early in the morning with recycling is very disruptive. So there are so many little pieces to noise from so many different,
Well, then
generations.
we'll have this in there, and just take a look at the amplified noise stuff. And then just think, there are other.
There are layers.
There are other
yeah.
parts of this noise ordinance, but this is kind of the better place to go to start looking at it. And then we can come up with other ideas, but recognizing that change these ordinances that basically really impact normal commercial activity
Mhm.
are not likely to get past the town meeting. But that's not a reason to try.
I'm not changing anything. They have admitted they're
Yeah.
breaking the law as
Yeah.
it stands,
Yeah.
and we're trying to come
No,
up with a
you're,
way to
you're in
make.
better shape than the rest of us.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, so we've set a new world record
Yeah.
for length of meeting.
Mhm.
But it's, we have a report from the PR committee to go, and I think you just gave us a report, and we need more.
I'll pass.
By
You
the
guys-
way,
A lot of publicity.
the announcement of this meeting in the Inky digital.
You don't want to have another copy.
Like the time-
It's amazing.
I know.
It's been a slow news week. No.
No, it's sort of the luck of the week.
It's
I
okay.
mean, they've been very cooperative about running everything that.
Well, they like the fact when we have speakers, when it gives them, some visual or something. Yeah.
Right.
No, so and I've got, and the next meeting is 3 weeks from now, so I'll do the same thing.
Good.
Okay.
Peter, there's only one thing to add that's not on the agenda.
Mhm.
Because I've had a meeting with the fire chief and because this study costs less than $50,000, they're going to reevaluate whether they can renovate the Sconset Fire Station that covers Tom Nevers, Quidnet and Sconset. And they're hoping that they can get this through, have space for 2 men to sleep. And actually, they just ordered a second fire truck. They're at $1 million a piece. And that new truck would come to Sconset.
Is that the Kimberly building in Wisconsin?
Where's it located?
It's on New Street on the corner. It used to be a school
Yeah.
when Snooky Eldridge was a boy.
Yeah, but
Long time
the hydraulic theory of
I'm not sure what kind it
public
was.
government, it would seem that the lack of approval of storage areas behind may have, helped.
It's unfortunate
Yeah.
that didn't pass because they have all this equipment they can't work on without that warehouse kind of storage unit. But this is because people's insurance are going up. You're not near a fire station. And one bay is an ambulance, one will be.
Fire truck. Good.
fire truck.
The problem is they don't have enough water capacity.
Yeah.
When we have a fire down Tom Nevers where I am, down near the
And they'll
baby
pump
base.
out the pool.
That's exactly what they're gonna have
And
to do.
they've adapted that for
Yeah.
people who have that kind of pumping.
So they're gonna reopen the one in Sconset?
They're going to hope to based on, they hired the company SMRT that's in Andover that did the fire station, the school. They do major engineering and design. So we're going to hope in 3 months that the report is very positive, and then you go out to bid it and put it in a warrant article. May not make this year's town meeting, but
It sounds like progress.
a huge progress.
Yeah.
I have a question
Yeah.
that nobody seems to have an answer, maybe because I haven't answered it enough. We have a fire truck that goes through town all the time with sirens on very low, just drives through town, up the streets all over town. I was fire commissioner. We never did that. What
serious?
is that truck going through town in the middle of the day?
Never heard of it.
To pick
I
up
think you have to ask the
donuts,
fire chief. That's the person you're.
That's the person I'm going to ask. I mean, it makes no sense. You're adding more traffic to the street.
Yeah.
And if they're out doing inspections, you should not use a piece of fire equipment for inspections.
Okay.
They have to pick up donuts.
There you go. There you go. He's looking for Dunkin' Donuts.
Next meeting is with the police chief, and it is, what is August?
August 24th.
24th.
Yeah, great, great.
10 o'clock here.
10 o'clock here.
Yeah.
So
What
that's
day?
that's in 10
Yeah.
minutes. Motion adjourned. Second.
What day's our next meeting?
She's speaking Monday at the Civic Association in Wisconsin.
Absolutely. Nice.
Sorry.
Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Monday, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right, so call the fire
Yeah.
chief, so great.
Because,
Find out.
yeah, there's gonna be a big-
I've seen it.